This video is going to give you everything you need to know about the Bruinbear, and as is the case with almost every pet in Call of Dragons, there is nuance to the way that this pet actually works that is very, very important to understand. So in this video, I'm going to break it down. I'm going to reveal the secrets of Bruinbear. I'm going to compare to other pets you could use. We're going to talk about the best skills to deploy, the most important attributes, and I would say just use this thing on Goresh and Chisgule, but I'm getting ahead of myself on the hero combos. Let's jump into the vid. Hello, my friends, and welcome back. I'm Chisgule Gaming, starting to be known as the Pet Whisperer, by the way, but I've got to give credit where credit is due, and that is to the Professor. The Professor clued me into a number of insights in this video, and I always enjoy my debate with him about pets. And also, today's video is sponsored by the makers of Call of Dragons. Thank you to them for sponsoring today's video. Let's dive into the details of the Bruinbear. What does this thing do? Why would you want it? Who should go for it? And the TLDR is that, look, if you're new to pets and Call of Dragons, it's all about the talent skill. If you catch a pet without the talent skill, you probably can just get rid of it. There are a few exceptions to that if the attributes are really good. So we need to look at this skill as it defines what it is this pet is doing. And this is a Goresh and Chisgule pet because they're doing extra counterattacks. And really, you might even say this is a Chisgule pet, because she's the one that's doing the extra counterattacks, and Goresh is doing a bunch of area of effect damage. But let's talk about this. Quickening is the talent skill. Gains charged. So the pet gains charged, which means that each counterattack against an enemy legion inflicts 1 stack of barbed mark. And the next time the hero casts a rage skill, they will deal damage to up to 5 surrounding enemies that have barbed marks and clears all of the stacks of barbed marks from those enemies. There is a maximum of 3 stacks. Now, the amount of damage you're going to deal is a multiplier of the number of barb marks you have. This is a physical damage dealer, and it is based off of your strength. So strength is very critical on this pet. Okay, so far so good. So what are we really talking about here? We have a pet that, if you are getting focused, will do damage back to other things based on your being focused. Okay, so every time they attack you, you're going to do a counterattack. You have to be directly targeted to be doing counterattacks. It applies these barbed marks. You can get 3 stacks, and then boom, you do a bunch of damage. But the Professor clued me into some nuance of this that is really, really unexpected. It was very surprising to me, which is that basically when the pet activates this charged ability, which lasts for 3 seconds, it makes it so that the next time your hero uses a skill, you're going to do damage, okay? But if your rage cycle is very, very fast, then you will basically be throwing out these barbed mark stacks, use an active skill, do quickening damage to a bunch of enemies, then you apply more barb stacks, more barbed marks, and then your secondary hero uses their active skill, and they will do quickening damage. In other words, if your rage cycle is fast enough, you actually do quickening damage twice. Your typical rage cycle, if you are not getting focused, is too slow for that. But if you are getting focused, you generate extra rage for each of the things targeting you, or you can have talents that help you generate extra rage, and you can, I have confirmed this, trigger quickening damage twice in 1 skill cycle. That is kind of wacky. So this dramatically increases the damage potential of this ability, because when I was comparing pets, and I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself, the end of this video is going to have a very important comparison to other pets here. But when I was comparing to other sources of damage, like, well, gosh, we have a pet that does damage when you're getting targeted. Okay, that's a venomous lizard. The venomous lizard already does this. It just does it a little bit differently. So instead of inflicting marks on everybody and then doing damage to marked things, it makes it so that at a very far range, whatever is hitting you has a 12% chance to take poison, but this can only trigger once per second. This hidden once per second limit is very, 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 very important to understand. But the damage per second is actually kind of nuts because it's doing this amount of damage per second for 3 seconds. And, you know, you could have that going on 3 different targets at a time, right? Like one target could have just been inflicted with poison. Another target could have been inflicted with poison the previous turn. Another target could have been inflicted with poison 2 turns ago, right? So anyways, the DPS from this is actually really good. We'll do a comparison. But there is more to talk about with the Bruinbear and the talent skill specifically, which is that this talent skill has range. Just like Chisgule has range when she does extra counterattacks or extra damage. Let me show you here. We get a look at Chisgule, who is here. Boom. Blood Fury deals additional diffused counterattack damage every second to all legions at close range. The Bruinbear also does their damage at close range. So this is important to understand. I do not think the Bruinbear's damage is infinite. Whereas, for example, if you're using Madeline and you like yourself a little Frostbear action, okay, the Frostbear actually can hit any range. At least I think it can. Now I'm questioning what I know, but I'm pretty sure this strikes at any range. So anyways, I'm getting ahead of myself. I'm talking about lots of different infantry options because this is an infantry pet. But if you're using Gorish and Chisgule, it's a pretty safe bet that the Bruinbear was basically built for them because Chisgule specifically is doing extra counterattacks, and therefore you can stack more stacks of quickening faster. The other thing that helps you do an extra counterattack, which I have covered in other videos, is a very important skill right over here, Counterstrike. I need to go look in a log, but I'm pretty sure Counterstrike, when this triggers, not only will it be doing an extra counterattack, but that extra counterattack will, I believe, apply a quickening stack. But I should go test that before I make that claim definitively. But this is important to understand that there are actually, with Gorish and Chisgule, a lot of ways that you can start to really stack up all of these barbed marks. And that's what this is all about. So when we talk about this particular pet, we can get a look at the skills that you would put onto this thing. And the attributes that are strongest are strength, which is what's associated with the talent skill, agility, which I would rate as extremely important for this pet, and endurance, which I would rate as the 3rd most important thing, although still important. And we'll talk about why agility is so critical here, because, I'll just jump into it right now. If you thought 3 stacks of barbed mark was good, okay, what if I told you that if you pick the end of season reward, terrible quickening, increases the max stacks of barbed marks by 1 for every 97 agility. So if you can get your pet to like 300 agility, instead of having 3 stacks of barbed mark, you can get to 6 stacks of barbed mark, and that can trigger twice. So now you're starting to understand, oh, actually, we can do some big damage with this thing, can't we? And the answer is yes, you can. So when we get a look at the skills, this is all about pet damage. This pet is all about damage. So we're going to go with a build that does that. And many people are starting to use this language that I don't know if anybody else was doing it first. I feel like, well, I started using it and I feel like other people started using it too, which is that you basically can do one of 2 builds with a pet. You can either make what I call a hero build, which is where you go all in on enhancing the hero, or you go with a pet build, which is all about enhancing what the pet is doing. And this is a pet that is all about making a pet build. And the reason is pretty obvious. This ability over here is pet damage, and it does not really enhancing the hero at all, right? It has synergy with a hero, but it doesn't actually enhance the hero. Now, the Shadow Phage Rate is the exact opposite, but that's a video for another day. So pet build is what we're going for, and pet damage is what we want to see. Now, because this is an infantry frontline pet, you always want to go in and get Counterstrike. And I would say ideally it's a 2-star Counterstrike. It's relatively cheap. This makes it so that when your Legion is hit with a normal attack, they have a 50% chance to deal damage to the attacker. By the way, I'll put the full build up on the screen, up in the upper right corner, or maybe the bottom right corner, so you just can understand where we're going with this as we go along, all right? But Counterstrike is very important for the extra counter attack, as I was describing, and for Gorish and Chisgule, this skill is a must-take skill. This also, by the way, lets you deploy, ideally, it would be a 1-star ability, and I'm sure I can find it. It's an agility-based ability. Oh, I don't have one right now. That's why I'm struggling to find it. Right over here, Wild Counterstrike. This gives you a 100% chance to deal damage to the target legion when you cast Counterstrike, and it is a meaningful amount of damage, and this is agility-based. So now you have 2 sources of damage on this pet. Technically, Counterstrike is doing hero counterattack damage, weirdly enough, whereas this is pet damage over here, and now you have this pet damage over here. Well, once you have 2 pet damage sources, now you can look at abilities for your pet that move all in on pet damage. So I actually picked up 2 copies of Tooth and Claw last season because I have a lot of pets I want to put this onto. On this particular pet, it's very good because you should have high strength on this pet because the talent skill is a strength-based skill. And now you have 2 skills that will benefit. You've got the Counter-Strike related ability, which we were just looking at, Wild Counter-Strike, and you've also got the talent skill. So both of them are enhanced by Tooth and Claw. Now from here, I mean, gee, if you've got 2 abilities that are doing damage, enhancing their damage is good, but also in the past, we've talked many times about then increasing your crit rate. That includes Blood Roar, which gives you a chance to crit, but the issue is that this pet has a lower luck attribute. So this skill is easier to get, but very expensive. It's actually very expensive. I mean, 14,000, bro, that's one of the more expensive ones. Whereas you can catch or get from the Merit Shop a 1-star version, which I don't want Blood Roar. I'm pretty sure I have it. Let's see here. Do I? Angry Roar is the capturable version. This is an agility-based skill. It's behind my head. GG. So, right? So this skill is very, very good on this pet because you have agility on this pet. You should have very high agility. All right? And we already talked about how you would go for the 3-star end of season reward, which is very important for this pet. But I just want to emphasize that, like, I'm very hesitant to put 3-star end of season rewards onto 1-star talent skill pets. I feel like a 2-star talent skill pet are better. And it's like, yeah, okay. Now we can talk about deploying your 3-star abilities, but there's no way to recover these as of now. So it's just a really big commitment to a 1-star talent skill pet, you know? So I don't plan to use Terrible Quickening on this pet, unfortunately, because it's a 1-star talent skill pet. I'm not going to do it. I could regenerate this pet a bunch, position for it, and eventually replace every skill that's on here by doing a transfer of, you know, a 2-star talent skill if I ever catch one, which would overwrite the skills that are on here. But that's maybe a thing I will do down the road, right? So anyways, Terrible Quickening is very good. But if you are in that lucky realm of that, like, 7 or 8 skill slots, right? Terrible Quickening is definitely one of the final additions, and the other final addition that is an end of season reward that you can get even if you don't win is Fatal Bite, right? At this point, you've picked up 2 abilities that are increasing your critical chance. Now we just go for fat crit damage, man. Fat crit damage. That's where it's at. Now, there are some alternatives, and you may be wondering, wait a minute, Chisgule, you didn't even talk about Forceful Quickening. Why not? This is only going to enhance the damage of Quickening. So this is only going to enhance your talent skill damage. And for me, on my particular pet, my endurance is actually lower. So by focusing not on this ability, I can sort of enable my pet to be primarily about the 2 attributes I care about the most. Firstly, strength, then agility. Right? And you want that agility ideally to be above the break point for having 3 stacks of quickening be applied, the extra 3 stacks. So that's, 97 agility per point. So if you're wondering, wait, how do I figure out how much I have, right? You can go over here and see what your current attributes are, but you want to know what the final attributes are going to be to figure that out, right? You're going to take this number, multiply by 59, and add in the 27 for me, whatever the base value is for you. So for me, this would be 27 times, or rather plus, 27 plus 3.51 times 59 is the max potential of the pet, which is 234, which is not amazing. If I divide that by 97, that means I can get 2 extra stacks of quickening. But I did regenerate this pet, and I landed on this over here. This looks pretty good. Let's see if this meets the breakpoint. It would be 32 plus, it probably does not, 4.16 times 59. Just short of the breakpoint. GG. So anyways, this is not a pet I would want to put that special skill onto, because instead of getting 3 extra stacks of quickening, I would only get 2. I'm like right on the border. So anyways, I'll mess around with these, regenerates more if I get more serious about deploying that skill. But let's talk about a few other skills you could deploy if you wanted to go in a slightly different direction, or you just want to go with a budget route. You're like, bro, I'm not a whale. What are you doing? If you wanted to do a more budget route, some skills that you could go and get would include hit back. Look, Goresh and Chisgule are doing a lot of counterattacks, and elevating their counterattack damage, increasing your crit rate is pretty good. Unfortunately, luck is a low and unimportant attribute on this pet. So, it may not be as high, depending on how many agility skills you've used. And I feel like you probably ought to have used at least 2. You've got your wild counter strike. Well, maybe you haven't used 2. If you want a budget version, you can also use blood for blood, right? More crit rate. This is another way to get it. And if you wanted some endurance-based abilities, if perhaps you believe in these particular abilities, or you have them, or your endurance is high, so you want to move in on the plan, what you could do is instead get bristles, extremely cheap for 2 stars, and it just mitigates enemy attacks. So that means you're going to be more tanky. The enemy effectively has 1.56% less attack when they're hitting you and when you hit them. So bristles is good. The other option that I generally like on a tanky pet is tough counterstrike. Makes you more survivable. 100% chance to gain a stack of tough counterstrike or tough pet when you cast counterstrike. And this decreases the pet skill damage you take. And this is going to stack up to 5 times. And look, when you're getting hit by 10 plus things, you're actually taking a lot of pet damage. So getting more tanky actually is good. I'm a fan. So those are the other skills that I would recommend that you put onto the Bruinbear. This is not a pet where you're going for fierce attack. This is not a pet where I feel like, even though I finished explaining that extra rage is really insane, because you want a fast rage cycle, outbursts of rage, you're going to max out on your rage generation anyways in a single turn, most likely because of how many things are hitting you. So I don't think this is what you want to do either. I think you just want to move in on a super high damage build that just shreds enemies around you and punishes them for hitting you. And then you just try to make your infantry as tanky as you can and let the pet do the work. Now, with that said, should you get a Bruinbear, or should you just stick with a venomous lizard? And in fact, I have done some math to go prove that, courtesy of some information from the professor about the base damage that would be dealt from these skills. So let's go get a look. This is the DPS calculation of the Bruinbear without the 3-star talent, end of season skill that enhances your talent skill, okay? So the way we calculate the damage here, you can see it on the screen, and we're getting a look at the base damage, which is 9 base damage, times 3 stacks, which is the max number of stacks. We're going to assume that you get to that, because that should be pretty easy to do. And we're going to assume that you do the damage twice. You have a rage cycle so fast. This is an 8-second skill cycle for this one. You're going to go so fast that you get double activation of the damage phase on the Bruinbear, which is the aspiration, right? So that means you're getting swarmed, basically. So if all of that is true, we take all of the total damage, so that's the 9 damage per stack times 3 stacks per target times 10 targets, 5 from the first activation, 5 from the second activation, and we divide by the number of seconds. It's an 8-second skill cycle, and bada boom, we have the DPS. So now we can compare. And wait a minute, if you have an 8-second skill cycle, actually you do less DPS than a Venom Lizard. Well, wait a minute. What if you have a 7-second skill cycle? Well, now you do commensurate damage with a Venom Lizard. But again, this assumes there are 5 targets in your close proximity to hit, whereas the Venom Lizard has infinite range. But if you're doing A 6-second skill cycle, which is hard to accomplish, but if you're under intense swarm, is possible as long as you're not getting silenced. Now you're looking at 45 damage per second, which is pretty good. Now, if your rage cycle is slow, your DPS drops to the floor. I mean, it goes way down. Because remember, now you're only hitting 5 targets because you've only done 1 activation of damage on the effect of the Bruinbear. So it's only 15 DPS if it's a 9-second rage cycle. And your standard rage cycle, if nothing's hitting you, this is pretty bad. I mean, but then again, if nothing's hitting you, actually, technically your DPS is 0. So we're still counting on 5 things to be hitting you. To have a 10-second rage cycle, I don't know. It seems unlikely. The damage of the Bruinbear basically drops through the floor if you're not getting hit. The same is true of the Venom Lizard. They don't do damage if you're not getting hit. Anyways, the point I'm trying to make here is that a Venom Lizard actually is pretty good. So when would you want to use a Venom Lizard and when would you want to use the Bruinbear? Well, this is where things get kind of funky because it's all about now the end of season 3-star skill. You see, super infection increases your trigger chance of infection, which is great when you are under low swarm, but does literally nothing if you're under heavy swarm, which I don't like. Often you will be under heavy swarm. That's the whole point of infantry, is like you're getting heavy swarmed. Your goal is to run them into the freaking mix and get hit. So in that regard, I think that super infection is not as exciting as a skill. It's great for small skirmishes, not important for the season-defining big ones, which means that, like I said, you're capped at 1 trigger per second under heavy swarm. It's not exciting. Whereas terrible quickening doubles your damage potential. So if you double these numbers, now if you have that end of season skill on there, it's really crazy. You have way more damage potential than the Venom Lizard. So in a lot of ways, the Bruinbear is a pet you don't necessarily need to work on, even if you're working on Chisgule, unless you're really positioning for the 3-star end of season skill that's really good. It doubles the number of stacks because you are doubling your damage potential. And look, okay, a target can have a maximum of 6 stacks. Remember, I said this has to be on Chisgule because she has a chance to do double counterattacks, and the combination of double counterattacks plus counterstrike means you could potentially dish out a lot more damage, okay? So I think the Bruinbear is best if you are setting up for the 3-star terrible quickening with the extra 3 stacks. And we are really looking for the extra 3 stacks. Like, bro, these 3-star skills are really rare. Like, I would not mess around with those. The safer choice is actually the Venom Lizard, because the Venom Lizard, you build it once and you can actually use it on any infantry you want, and like it will do fine. So Venom Lizard is actually good. And the other thing that's really weird is that, okay, so we look at all of these DPS numbers, but what about if you're up against like a rally? Like you're rallying. That's the whole point of Gorish and Chisgule is to rally, right? But the Bruinbear is not set up for rallying. It's set up for area of effect damage. So the damage of the Bruinbear is actually kind of unimpressive, relatively speaking, in a 1v1. Which is what a garrison situation typically is. Like if you're rallying their garrison, you're typically not getting swarmed by enemies that are in close proximity. If anything, the enemies are swarming from far away. And in that case, once again, the Venom Lizard is a better pet. So it's a little bit weird. Like, which of these do you go for? The Bruinbear, as it turns out, is just fat DPS for field clearing. That's where the Bruinbear shines. You put it on Chisgule. Yeah, I really feel like I keep saying Gorish and Chisgule because the two are so goated, but like it's really all about the Chisgule doing the extra counterattack, which gives the extra opportunity to sort of trigger a quickening stack, or I guess it's called a barbed mark. And if your rage cycle is fast enough, you can see the math shows you that like, yes, you will do much more damage. And the faster your skill cycle is, the better. Gosh, I don't want to get into skill cycles. It's already nerdy enough, man. We'll jump back in game here. I probably lost a bunch of people already the second I busted out the spreadsheet, but I feel like we drew some pretty good conclusions there. So, for me, this Bruinbear looks pretty good. If I'm feeling super sassy this season, where'd it go? This one. I have the 1-star. If I'm feeling super sassy and, I don't know, I just want to move all in, I could go and get that 3-star skill for this pet And like, bro, it would be a field clearing monster. It would be. It would be. But the only reason to build a Bruinbear is, in my opinion, if you're using like that Gorish Chisgule combo and you don't already have a Venom Lizard up and running. I already have a pretty decent Venom Lizard here. Like, but the Bruinbear ends up being way more damage if I set up for that 3-star skill. Do I want to do that? I don't know, man. I got to figure it out. If you enjoyed the vid, throw a like on here, consider subscribing. I think the safer end of season skill to get, and I haven't even got mine yet because I'm like, I'm like decision paralysis here. But like, the safest thing is Split Pain Bloom. This thing is goated as can be, man. All these extra targets that you get to hit. Ooh, ideally you get to that break point of 2 extra targets and it's so good. But this video is long enough. Oh, by the way, see what I was saying about super infection? Extra trigger chance. See? Luck-based extra trigger chance, right? So you have that Venom Lizard. Here I am continuing to talk even though I said I'd be done. But we go to the Venom Lizard and, you know, with the one I had, look, my luck is not good on this pet. So like, it'd be such a bad take for me on this particular version of this pet, but you know, like that's forceful infection, wrong one. The end of season skill is the super infection, 4.23%. I mean, I could pretty much double the chance maybe with better luck, but I don't think that's where it's at, man. Because if it could trigger more than once per second, oh my God, I would be beyond hyped about this ability. This ability would be insane if this skill could trigger more than once per turn, but it can't. And I can check in with support and double check that, but last I did, and that's what they said. So is what it is. You enjoyed the vid? Throw a like on here. Consider subscribing. I accept my title as the Pet Whisperer, although often these things are so complex that mistakes can be made. So let me know your thoughts down below in the comments. And I will update the pinned comment if I learn anything new. Until next time, you have fun, smash in the kingdom, and check the cards in the end screen for some more pet build information that you might enjoy.